Welcome to After the Tower, a podcast about change, transformation, and upheaval, and how we come through those experiences. My name is Toland, and this is the first episode of this podcast series. I'm excited to share the episode with our guest, Mercy Mfon. And Mercy and I, as we talk about, we met at the LGBTQIA plus retreat at Spirit Rock Meditation Center. This retreat happened to coincide with the presidential election of 2024. And so we talk a little bit about that tower moment and the surreal experience of receiving that news while on a silent meditation retreat surrounded by queer folks. So as we talk about, we met at that retreat, and afterwards, Mercy reached out to me just saying that, enjoyed our conversation during the retreat and just checking in to see how I was doing. And we followed up and connected, and we realized through talking that we both kind of were in pivot points in our lives. Mercy working on the project that we'll be talking about in the podcast, and me trying to kind of build my business and start to share my voice. And so we kind of became accountability buddies for each other, meeting each week and checking in. And, from the conversations we had over those weeks, I really came to appreciate the wisdom and perspective that Mercy brings. I really think they have a really valuable perspective on the world and on this moment. And when I decided to engage in this podcast project, they were one of the first people I thought of to invite. And I'm excited to share this conversation. This was the first time doing this for me, so there may be some audio imperfections and editing imperfections, but I really appreciate you coming with me on the journey as I grow in this skill and learn more. But there really are some great perspectives that Mercy shared throughout, and I'm excited for you all to hear them. We talk about kind of their experience of having to let go of their nonprofit organization and move into a different role, sharing their gifts through a book. And I'm excited to hear it. So let me just share Mercy's bio, and then we'll head right into the conversation. So Mercy Mfon is a queer Nigerian-American writer, educator, and change maker with a passion for storytelling that empowers and transforms. As the founder and director of strategic initiatives at Wild Diversity, Mercy has reshaped the landscape of outdoor accessibility, ensuring BIPOC and LGBTQ plus communities have opportunities to experience nature on their own terms. Now Mercy is channeling their expertise and passion into the written word. Their upcoming book, Everyday Spiritual Gifts, a practical guide to your personal magic, spirit guides, and cosmic journey, is a heartfelt guide to awakening intuitive abilities, deepening spiritual connection, and bringing balance to everyday life. With a focus on accessibility and empowerment, Mercy invites readers to explore their spiritual senses, embrace personal magic, and navigate life with greater joy and purpose. And now, without further ado, enjoy the conversation. All right, we're here. So, I don't know. I think that I wanted to start our conversation a little bit just talking about how we met, because it was just like a very unique way of meeting and a unique moment. And I think in itself, it was like a tower moment, collectively, it was like this.
For sure.
So obviously I'll just kind of start us off, but then I think we talked about it, but I would be curious about what drew you to that experience. So basically, we met at a silent meditation retreat. It was the LGBTQIA plus retreat at Spirit Rock, Buddhist meditation, silent retreat, and the dates happened to line up with the presidential election in 2025.
Yes.
So I'm
In
curious.
2024, the election.
2024, yes.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you.
It was a wild time.
It was a wild time. It's been a wild time since, but yeah, 2024. So I'm curious, like, what led you to that experience, and then I can share what led me to that experience, and then we can go from there.
Absolutely. So, as you know, I had been running a nonprofit for 7 years, and we just closed our doors like September was our last events permanently. We just ran out of funding, didn't have anything So I was in a place where it was just an immensely stressful period and had been for like a year plus. But that was just the massive amount of stress of this thing you've been dedicating your entire life to for 7 years ending, having to announce layoffs to your entire staff, a source of financial stability for them has been rock loose, and a part of the work that you did, you're responsible for. It was such a challenging time of heavy stuff, but it just felt so heavy. And I knew that I just needed to process all that in a different way other than sitting here in my house by myself where I am every single day. And I had always been wanting to go on a retreat. I had never been a meditation retreat, a silent retreat, any kind of retreat. And I was Googling retreats, and Spirit Rock was kind of already on my list of places that held that. So when I looked and like they have one coming up in like weeks, I want to go. I reached out to them and be like, "Do you have a scholarship?" Because I was freshly unemployed, right?
Right.
And they said they did, and they sent it to me. They weren't like, "Hey, I have a scholarship. Do you want it?" They're like, "Your name's on the thing. Fill out this information." And I was like, "Okay, I am going." And that's how it landed for me. I had, n- I've never talked to anybody who's been. I absolutely did not know what to expect. Didn't know anybody there or any of the instructors. It was just a time for me to kind of go in and figure some stuff out in a new supportive environment. So that's how I landed there, and that's how I got to meet you.
Oh my God. Yeah, and there's so much in that, but I think it's like you didn't need to know everything. You just had this intuitive pull,
Hmm.
that you needed some healing and you needed like a retreat. You needed that. And I find that when something's right for me, like there is less resistance to it. Like you immediately were able to get the
Right,
thing,
right. Yeah.
And that like to me just like is such an indicator that that was right. Whereas like for me when I'm like like pushing up a hill to make something happen and I'm desperate and that's always ends up not being the right thing. And again,
Yeah.
like I want to be there's a distinction between something being like easeful and easy, like it can be hard, but it like the next step flows. And so anyway, um yeah, that's amazing. And I mean, it didn't like did you have any thoughts or feelings about the election? Like just about being on a retreat at that time, or was it kind of like this is the retreat I want to go on and who cares what time it is?
Well, no, I wouldn't let an election announcement change anything. Like I would never like plan around it.
Yeah.
Um, but I remember they sent that email out and they're like, we are not going to tell you the election results till the last full day, which was like a Thursday.
Yeah.
And then we left on Friday. And I felt so disappointed by that decision because, I mean, like it is a LGBTQ event, but I also feel a lot of those people live in queer hubs
Hmm.
where they go back to this larger community where they eat or go to the store is relatively safe to be LGBTQ. It's not the case like where I live, rural Oregon is really conservative. Depending on the results, it would change my safety.
Yeah.
Kind of a negative for either way. Say, for example, if Trump didn't win, then, rural people out here might be more activated, might be more aggressive.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Then he did win. It kind of changes the environment and what you expect to go back. And that might not be real feelings, but there's anxiety around what is going to shift next. And so I felt the fact that they were going to keep it from us, may have made me in a place to just worry, worry, worry. And then I kind of felt like, are they being selfish? Like they don't want to deal with us in
Right.
that way. They're
Hmm.
being like, we'll just tell you on your way out the door. You know what I mean? So I was
Yeah.
like, mm. But having experienced it through the retreat, I thought they did the best thing
Hmm.
because it was kind of smack dab in the middle of our retreat, right? But
It
we
was like
got,
latter half, but we still had plenty of time.
yeah. Well, it was Tuesday and we left on Friday. We arrived on
Oh, you mean the
Sunday.
election? I thought you meant the announcement. Yeah, the
Though, like, if we heard it real time, if we
yeah,
heard it real
yeah,
time.
yeah.
And I felt like it was great when they told us the announcement because had we heard it, we had enough legs by then. We got a little more rooted, we got a little more grounded. We built up our base and our resiliency. So when we did hear the announcement, it was just like, mm, you know what I mean? For me, at least, for me. I know a lot of people had a hard time with it, but it felt like it's not a competition, but the most marginalized of the group took it in stride, while some other people did not take it well. And I also think there's some communities that are more used to being disappointed, who are more used to being thought less, you know? So it was just like, oh, I already knew our country was kind of a shit show. So no surprise there. But there are people who were shocked. I don't think I was one of them. I was disappointed,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
not shocked if that, if there can be a distinction.
No, I think there is a huge distinction between those two things. And I definitely agree with you. There was as certain kinds of people who had like a bigger reaction. I know for me, I think it wasn't like it wasn't like I was like horrified or whatever, but I intuitive like my intuition was pointing me towards Kamala winning. That's just what I was feeling. And so it was kind of like this, oh, like so like that's not what I had seen, you know.
Hmm.
But at the same time, like, like as you said, like there are people who have been let down all the time by our government, have been marginalized and oppressed, and like that would have still continued with Kamala to a different
Yeah,
degree, maybe different clothing, different whatever, but that wasn't like a solution. That was like a slightly better situation, which again, that is a big difference to those who are most marginalized. At the same time, I would like to see us build something way better than what we've got right now.
yeah.
And
I
I
don't
think
think the elections change the state of our country.
no.
If Kamala won, there's not less people who desire to hurt and harm. There's not less prejudiced people. There's not less racist people in the world. It doesn't change that. It gives us a little more hope in the moment. But I think the work that we have to do, whether it's internally or the gifts that we give the world, it doesn't change that. You know what I mean? We still got to do that.
Yeah.
Um, and I think the delay in the announcement allowed us to remember that
Yeah.
and to kind of like you and I connected around that, like
Yeah.
the work we got to do. If anything, it was like, okay, we're gonna get real and do this work now.
Yeah, no, I honestly that's what I felt. I was like, okay, like this is it. Like this is the time. Like
Yeah,
no holding back, no holds bar, like forget it. Like we have to just build the world we want to see and we have to align
absolutely.
ourselves with that.
Yes,
And
absolutely.
and I can't sit around waiting for some government to like protect me or to do anything. Like I have to be the change I want to see and connect with people who want to do that. And so like again, we met. My memory of us meeting is so basically, once they made the announcement, it's supposed to be a silent retreat, but it kind of like the doors were open after that. And I'm sorry, my incense are like blowing
I
everywhere.
love it. I'm having incense envy right now. I'm like, I should have put on some incense.
Like they're like all up in my face. But I remember there was like we had dinner, we could talk, and then after like the last sit of the day, they were like, if you guys want to continue talking more, you can go to like the basement area and like continue chatting. And I felt this pull to talk, but like I didn't know anyone, and there's the social anxiety, and there's like I wasn't sure about it. And I think we had like left at the same time out of the like main hall and I were getting to our shoes. And I think you talked to me or I talked to you and you were like, are you going downstairs? And I was like, I don't know, maybe I'll go downstairs. And then we did. And we had this like amazing, like immediately deep conversation where we were talking about our guides. We were talking about like the spiritual movement that needed to happen. We even named the movement, we called it the Shapers after
Yes.
after Octavia Butler and Parable of the
Yeah.
Sower and it was just like this moment for me of like there's all this uncertainty now but like connecting with you I was like there are people who have vision and who have a voice and have this like they're creating a better I don't want to say better like a world that's more in alignment with my values
Yeah.
and like that I can have hope in. Forget the government, forget them. Like we have to just do it. We have to do it ourselves. And there are people out there that want to do it too. I think is the thing
Hmm.
that like really helped me because I admit like I've held a lot of my spiritual beliefs very closely for fear of being judged.
Hmm.
And the thing is, it's impossible to connect with people if you do that, to find your people if you do that.
Absolutely.
And obviously I've been so inspired by your story of just like the like have you've built this amazing nonprofit Wild Diversity and like yeah it ended and that was and then you also in that time which I want to talk about in that time so I want to kind of get the timeline of in that time you got a vision for something you wanted to
Hmm.
put out there exactly what we're talking about like not succumbing to the negativity or to succumbing to the fear, but saying, hey, I'm going to create what I want to see anyway, despite
Hmm.
whatever you're saying. And that's what I feel a lot from when you talk about this book, this vision. But I'm I guess I want to start with because I know like obviously there was an ending and that was hard.
Hmm.
But I think I want to start instead with like, when did the first seeds of this book idea come to you? And how did that ending help you see it more clearly or trust in it more clearly? If that
Hmm. Hmm. For me, like when I started my nonprofit, I'm a kind of person that if I'm doing work and I don't feel passionate about it, it creates this inner turmoil. Like I'm cranky more of the time, or I drink heavily during that time, or I'm just not my best work. I'm not the best worker I can be. And I noticed that like young when I was in my 20s. I noticed that when I was really young about what I wanted to do and what I didn't want to do and how it felt in my body to think about different careers outside of what my passions were. So I was actually doing carpentry at the time, and it was feeling like my path had veered somewhere else, and I'm chugging through the woods for no reason. And I was completely not on my path. Um, and I had a mentor, a psychic mentor, and I talked to her, and she's like, you're doing something with forests and people and outside. And I started my nonprofit. Fast forward 7 years later, more around like the 5 year mark, I was not feeling it again. And I was also feeling really down on myself and ashamed about it because most people have a career that they just do their entire life. So, according to my mom, especially. So, I
Mm,
finally found something that I was super passionate about. I was happy to do day in and day out, regardless of what the pay was in the beginning, which was zero. And now I don't have that passion. So, I was concerned more so than my inability to stick to something for extreme long term, right?
mhm,
And I was kind of going through that cycle on and off, but I was also like, if I were to quit this job, I don't know where I'd go next. My entire life has been this organization. There was no work-life balance because there's no balance.
right.
Days, evenings, weekends. There's a one summer where I work 8 weeks in a row without a single day off. Like it just so much time and energy and love pouring into this organization. And I could not think of, even when that feeling waned, I could not think of something else I wanted to do with that level of passion. And it felt
Mhm,
problematic for me. So I go back to um, my psychic mentor and I ask her, what's next? Like, this is not it. And she was like, your guys are telling me something in publishing. And I'm like, what are they talking about? Nobody reads magazines, like publishing. Like, there's a
Right.
difference when you're like, we are writing or doing, but when you're saying publishing, you're saying printing something out for the most part. And I'm just like, hmm. And I was like, I don't see it. Like, give me more information. And she's like, that's all they want to tell you. They didn't even want to tell you that. But apparently I'm that pushy. Um, so I was like, okay, like I write like writing. I love writing. I don't see it, but sure, let's do it. Like, you know. Um, and I thought it was gonna be something that clicked with one of my really good friends, and that didn't work out. So then I'm feeling lost with the idea. And like a year later, I was just sitting with it, an idea, and it just came to me that I needed to write a book. Uh, and that my guides would actually help me do it. Like I didn't have to do it by myself. So once they said like, we want you to write a book on spiritual gifts, I was like, okay. There, write a book on cosmic journey. I'm like, I don't know anything about that, but sure, let's include that. So I mean, there's always so much openness, and that's what I feel like when you're on your path, when you're talking about there's not that resistance. There's that flow, being in the flow state. When your guides are like, this is what you should be doing, it's gonna feel like, all right, sure, I don't know how, but I'm down, is the reoccurring feeling when they're talking to me. I've always been afraid of, the story of Jonah and the well in the Bible.
A little.
They're like, hey, Jonah, we want you to go be a disciple and preach about the good word in the Bible, right?
Hmm.
And Jonah's like, no, thank you, I'll pass. And then they're like, Jonah, you got to do this. And Jonah's like, no, I don't want to. And Jonah's literally running away. Jonah is leaving, packed up, leaving town. Like, this is not the thing I'm going to do. And I don't know how Jonah managed to do this, but he got swallowed by a whale, right? He got
Right.
blackmailed by a whale swallowing to do this thing. And to me, I'm like, that sounded to me, I didn't like this story. To me, that sounded terrible. It sounded like force. It sounded like zero choices. You know what I mean? Um, it sounded like a really hard situation to be in when somebody is like, that doesn't feel right for me. And that story created a lot of fear around the idea of having a purpose in life for me.
Mm.
It created a lot of resistance because if purpose feels like getting swallowed by the whale and being blackmailed to be in the belly of the whale or to do this one thing you're being told to do, I'm like, I didn't want that. And it has never felt like that for me. My guys are like, it's more like a friend being like, hey, let's try this. Let's go on vacation to Greece. And I'm like, okay, like that's not a country that was on my list, but sure, if you're going, if you'll do it with me, like, let's go. It feels more like that, that I don't see that as a vision, but it feels really fun to try and explore that with your support, you know? And, that has brought me to writing this book. It's right now I'm working with the title Your Everyday Gifts. Because when we think about spirituality, it's not around big box religion, it's not around woo-woo. It's about these non-physical skills and talents you have to help support you in the physical world, you know? And so the process of writing this book has been really beautiful and really healing. Like one of my teachers was like, "Hey, you need to let yourself grow as you write this book." That's what I'm getting. And it has been that process. Like the whole concept of cosmic journey was kind of a dictation from my guides of like, all right, we're here at this chapter. I know nothing about it. What do you want me to write? And me doing these meditations as I'm writing it and has been just so beautiful and so opening and so revealing of going through this process as I'm writing the book, growing as a person from the first time I started typing words to this book to now, how much I've I've grown, how much I learn, how much I know has been, magical. And that magical that's like, when you do something magical and you're just like blow it off like it was just like taking a shower and you look back at it and you're like, I did that thing. It feels like that. We're like, I'm just doing this everyday magic, no big deal. But I can turn around and look, I'm like, I can't believe I'm dictating a book from my spirit, guys. That's wild.
God, that's amazing. There's so much in what you just said that I like want to dig into all of it. But I think like the theme I'm feeling through your sharing is like the theme of surrender.
Mm,
And when like it is like this tricky thing, and I experience this too with my guides of like, they're pulling me towards something and I'm like, I don't, when do I get a say, But I also see it as like we are connected, we are one. Like this is a
mm,
different aspect of myself that sees things from a different perspective. And like I chose to go in this direction. And I find when I am like Jonah and I run away, there's so much pain and resistance. And there is pain in going for it and doing the thing and being vulnerable to the new thing, but it's a
hmm
different kind of pain and it's less painful. I don't know how to explain that. But yeah, I really see so much surrender in that story, surrendering
hmm
to your gifts, surrendering to your guides, surrendering to your process. And like I'm curious how you like developed that trust,
hmm
or what that's been like for you, or how you kind of feel that trust to say like, yeah, I'm gonna just let my guides transcribe this piece. But I definitely want to get into other stuff too. So we'll start there.
Okay. Well, I think a lot about when you said that, the kind of like an idea around self-resistance ca came to mind. When I talk a lot about it in like the opening part of my book, and the chapter is called Knowing Yourself. And it is an extremely long chapter. It's probably the longest chapter, but it's basically talking about all those things that throws a person off from listening to their intuition,
Mm,
or things that throw your spiritual compass out of whack.
hmm.
So, one, we're influenced by so many things out in the world. So it's hard to know when your body's saying yes or no, when you're so influenced by everything else, changing your mental, emotional state constantly. It's constantly shifting and changing, like those days where you just feel kind of shitty and you don't even know why. You're like, I have no reason today. Actually, it's a nice day, I think. I don't
Right.
know. And we're so constantly influenced. So it makes it really hard to listen to our gut, to listen to our guiding centers and our intuitions. Another thing is like when I went to school, it's called Blue Iris Mystery School. It's about like spiritual gifts and kind of learning this witchy world. And one thing they talked about is all that trauma and resistance, all that past stuff in our lives. Like if people had traumatic and hard experiences in big box religion, they're going to carry a lot of resistance about anything spiritual, right?
Right.
If people had trauma around priests or leaders or being told what to do, even receiving advice, regardless how it is, they're going to have a lot of resistance around getting on their journey, receiving guidance from their spirit guides and stuff like that. So it is important for us to check our trauma, check our biases, check our past experiences, anything related to whatever we doing. Was there a time in the past before we knew this world where somebody made us feel fear, shame, or pain or harm around any of these topics? And have we really thought about it and processed it? Because when we can, then we can move forward on this journey. But if we just ignore all that and we forget about the first times they were mentioned, I know for me, like growing up in the 90s, the 80s and 90s, like witches were so scary on TV. I mean,
Totally.
there was always somebody with a lot of moles in a trailer for no reason, and you're like, hey, I need advice. And they only pulled one of two cards, the death card and the devil card. And they always made it feel like they were gonna die or they were being possessed by a demon, when that's not what those cards mean at all. But it was so scary. And so coming into my spiritual journey, like tarot cards were so terrifying for me. They
Mm.
were so, so scary for me. And understanding that and knowing that, knowing all my trauma from my big box religion, understanding that helps me open up a little bit more and remind myself that this work I'm doing is not that. And it is not my past experiences. And I think that allows me, to let go, to surrender into something new, to be open to it because I have confronted kind of that stuff and I learned about myself a little bit more in the process.
Yeah, that is so important. I'm so glad you brought that up because it is like such a huge thing. We've all been programmed and conditioned, whether in religion or in culture, not to trust ourselves. And there is like, I know for myself, there are just like a lot of stuck emotions, stuck beliefs that had to be processed. They had
Hmm.
to be healed. And, I didn't have a super religious upbringing. I grew up Catholic, but I remember when I first worked with the tarot, like I couldn't deal with the devil, like that card. I was like, I don't like it. Like I have a reaction to it. And it was, just some of that programming, about good and
Hmm.
evil in that very like binary way that it's taught in
Hmm.
Christianity. And you have to sit with that dark part of yourself before you can understand the devil. And you have to, with the tower, obviously, which is kind of the theme of this podcast, like you have to sit with the fact that life isn't in your full control.
Yeah.
Like you change
Hmm.
is inevitable, just like we talk about, just like it's talked about in Parable of the Sower. Like God is changed, change is going to happen. And so you have to be comfortable with not being fully in control
Hmm.
and adaptable to what presents itself to you. And yes, you have agency, but you don't have infinite agency. You don't get to decide everything that happens to you. And, the more I go into the spiritual experience, the more agency becomes kind of a interesting thing. Free will becomes an interesting thing. There is a lot of surrender. There is like, and the more I add trust in that, it brings things into me that are better than the things that my ego wanted,
Hmm. Hmm.
better than things that that controlling part of you wants. Yeah, I'm curious. I mean, I don't have like a question, I guess. I think it's just like I wanted to reflect that. And then I am just curious, like more about like what you can share um, about the process of writing the book or, just some of the, yeah, like what the kind of vision is, what you hope that folks, I mean, obviously it's not out yet. It's you're still in the process of writing it, but just kind of giving people a little bit of a flavor of your perspective, which you've already done so much of. But yeah, if there's anything that sparks for you in that arena, I'd love to hear more.
Yeah, I sometimes I describe this book as my gift or my love letter to the world, you know? Um, when you and I were both talking about this, new chapter that we are both are turning, I talked about like I get a feeling that, you know, the world's not in a great place right now, just all over. Before
Yeah.
the election, after, it's just in a challenging time. And the shift that's going to happen next is going to rely on people like you or me doing these small things in our parts of the world. And it's not going to be one person making a big move. It's going to be thousands and hundreds and thousands of people doing these change making in their different areas, which will encompass the globe of people finding support, growing in their spirituality to better prepare the world for whatever comes next. And it's about, building those roots, having those roots grow deep, and us. just growing from within versus an outside change first. And that's, really what I feel like this book is about. My brother, who I talk to from time to time, he's just like, he believes in the spiritual stuff, but he also thinks it's a little woo-woo-y. And we're talking about creating change, and he's like, just be a billionaire, you
Yeah.
know, and, shut down all those people who are harming the world. And it can get like to be this very aggressive vision. But I was talking about higher vibration. And he's like, oh, this is woo-woo. It's just not practical. And I'm just like, when we like the idea of, I think it's a story about like Tibetan monks or Buddhist monks or something. I think Tibetan monks and how they're high vibrational people and their impact on the cities and towns they live in are significant. Like those towns are more prosperous. They have these unique characteristics going for them. And it's not that they were just woo-woo and meditating. For me, I think of it as living so deeply in their purpose on their journey that they inspired the next person to do the same. And that person found their way, got on their journey, started vibrating high, and they influence a handful more people. That it kind of spreads by just being the light. Somebody rolls up to you and they look at you and like, you're so inspiring. I love the work you're doing. It touches me in this specific way and it makes me want to go out on my journey. And it slowly just builds and builds and builds like that. So when I meditate, I see this like I'm in the forest and I'm outside a lot. So I would get a lot of forest visuals. Think of this like mossy ground.
Hmm.
This mossy ground is like breathing and glowing in tune with the breath. And there's all these people just lying in the moss, just trying to find their way, just trying to meditate, relax, go on their journey. And this like somebody on their journey, they starts beating red. And as they find their way and their place, it starts expanding and it's growing bigger and bigger and it hits the next person. So their glow goes from like a yellow glow to this red, heartfelt glow and it keeps expanding across the forest floor like that. That's what I see about the work we're doing. And that's how I visualize it supporting and affecting the world.
Oh, that was gorgeous. That was so beautiful. I closed my eyes. I'm sure you saw while you were saying like that story about the moss and the forest. And I completely agree with you. I think that, capitalism and the paradigms we've been living in of colonialism and violence, they were all about power over. They were all about you have to get you have to go like you cannot trust yourself. You have to trust these authorities. You have to trust these people in power. And and I just feel like we're changing the paradigm. Like the age is changing. I don't know if I don't know, we've talked about, astrology stuff, but like Pluto into Aquarius is this humanitarian shift of energy. And I do feel like we're now moving inward and trusting the
Mm-hmm.
light inside of ourselves, rooting ourselves into ourselves, and then just sharing that energy with the world, being that example, and
Mm-hmm.
that will change other people naturally. It's not as instantaneous as maybe like, violence is, but it is much more powerful and much more longer lasting when it
It's
takes
deeper
effect.
rooted, right?
It's deeper rooted. It's deeper rooted. It's way deeper rooted. And I think just that example of the monks in Tibet and like this is like it reminded me of something that someone had said like they said that I don't know. Like the next it was like something I lost it. It was like something about how like the next Buddha or the next spiritual teacher won't be a person, it'll be a group of people. It'll be a community of
Mm.
people. And that feels
Mm-hmm.
true to me. Like I feel like we
Mm-hmm.
are moving into a paradigm of the network of
Mm-hmm.
all these people all over the world sharing and then shifting the vibration slowly by example. And again, not everyone's going to buy in, but I think a lot of people will once they
It
see
will
it.
support a lot of people without a doubt.
Yeah.
And I love what you say. I talk a lot about power over.
Mm.
power within. And it is, for me, the idea of, if there's so many ways in which we give away our power, right?
Yeah.
And so we're so good at kind of the Christian sheep mentality of like one person knows what's best for all of
Mhm.
us. Somebody who doesn't have any experience being us, doesn't live a similar life. Like, I trust everything they say wholeheartedly, divinely. And I feel like that's getting us in trouble because we carry that same mentality towards influencers, towards politicians, and we're like, whatever they say, towards marketing, and we give away our power constantly, to the point that we are not good at discerning for ourselves, and we fall into those traps of listening to people who don't support our best interests, and we're just out of practice looking at somebody like, hey, I admire you, I like this and this what you're saying, but this doesn't really make sense to, and spirituality is like, is it serving you or is it not serving you? That's the first thing we learn. So that means no matter what your teacher teaches you in the next 5 years, you need to look at it and is like, does this feel right for me right now? Which is like, for me, like a fundamental of what we learn when we go on these spiritual journeys. But a lot of people are not used to that. We give our power over. And I also feel that people who don't have a lot of power within, they don't have that red glow that's deeply rooted, are the ones that are constantly seeking power over. And we
Yeah.
easily give it up to them over and over. So if we can get that power within, then we'll be less likely to be the people who try to harm other people through control and power, and we're going to be more centered and balanced within ourselves. We'll be able to support ourselves with better decision making. So I think all around, having that power within supports you, supports everyone else. We're not giving our power away to one person and amplifying all the harm that they create in the world when we have that power within.
Yeah. Oh, that's so beautiful. And I totally agree. It's the key, when and you see this all the time where people are giving their power away to some leader and then they are disappointed. Like they inevitably they are betrayed because they've betrayed themselves from the jump.
Really, really.
Being
Say it again, tell it.
Yeah. Like, yeah, it's like, yeah, they just like when you worship someone, when you give them your power, you're betraying yourself and you always end up betrayed. It doesn't matter what they've done. Sometimes it's not even that big of a thing, but it's already baked into that relationship and that worship that we have. And so,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and I think like when my more optimistic self sometimes thinks like it can be as simple as if enough people take their power back, the system just falls because we're the ones feeding it with our
Mm-hmm.
worship,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
Exactly. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Yes. We do feed that. People don't just come into power and wreck house just because they have everything. They have all the money. I mean, it really helps, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's
But
complicated because there is like a truth to that. Like
they
it's like
they
it's a
well, they have a
paradox.
following.
Yeah.
You still need to be people to follow you.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Money just gets influence, right?
Yeah.
It amplifies the influence, but when you already have a following of people, like, we give that, we amplify that, The everyday person is a part of putting people in power. You can't get there if nobody believes in what you're saying, is willing to follow you.
Yeah. I just the hard part is getting a lot of people to let go of these long held beliefs,
Yeah.
and that's I think that's a kind of part of like you putting out like this work and you putting out this vision of like, oh, we could live a different way. And just all these people around the world doing that
Yeah.
will shift enough people to see that we don't have to live the way we've been living. We don't have to do what
Yeah.
we've been doing. We don't have to play into these kind of this form of consciousness, I guess is how I would put it. But
Absolutely. And when we can focus on um, better discernment, maybe we
mm,
can change the kind of playing field that we're in. It doesn't have to be Dems and Republicans.
right.
It doesn't have to look like that. But we're just kind of not that brave to make a shift. So there's just two, we're divided. And in the end, nobody is really served that well. via either party. So I think there's different ways we can go about it, but as long as we have the discernment to choose a different path, you know?
Yeah, I love that word discernment. I would love if you feel a call, I would love to you tease out like what how can people practice or like work with their discernment, you know, because like how can you know, like I'm watching something, I'm getting caught up in the energy of this game, you know, this like intensity of like all we're seeing in the world. How do I discern what to pay attention to, how I'm going to move, what I'm going to decide to do? I'd be curious if you have anything to say about that.
Yeah, I think intuition helps a lot with discernment.
Hmm.
So you worked on knowing yourself, you understood your trauma and your biases, and you start practicing on listening to your gut, listening to your guides, listening to your spiritual senses. You got to build that up, right? I think like spiritual senses, like that intuition is how we survived as people for so long. And it was so fundamental to survival. And now intuition is totally in a woo-woo science fiction category, but it's how we survived. And if we can kind of remember that and get back to that, we can start just practicing on listening to our intuition. You know, your intuition's always talking to you, but if you ignore it long enough, it's just the sound of the fan in the background. You know, it's just this thing that's always there that you don't listen to. And once we get back to start paying attention to it, I think our intuition will guide us a little bit more. So it's okay to choose leaders and people out there in the world, but we have to be in the place of looking at their entire body of work and being like, that works for me, that doesn't, that feels right, that doesn't feel right. And we're so held on to like, once you pick, you can't change your mind about them. And it's just really not true. We should be able to pick any leader and say, this is what I like, this is what I don't like. This is what feels good, this doesn't feel good. This what feels supportive to me, this doesn't feel supportive to me. So we just need to like remove our identity around the things that we choose. We have to be open to changing our mind. We have to be open to not liking our choices in anything. And just that practice alone is going to get us in the place of thinking like, okay, is this right? Is this not? And then over time, we could use that intuition to make better choices. But we're just so stuck with the first thing we choose, you know?
And it makes me think about like it's like that's like so ego, like the identity
Mm,
is attached to this
absolutely.
version of yourself. And it makes me harken back to, you know, the beginning of your story. You were attached to this idea of, you know, being, you know, running this nonprofit. It had, you know, you wanted it to continue forever
Hmm.
because that's what you were taught. That's what responsible people do. They stick to their decision. They stick to it and they stay it forever. That's
Yeah.
what good people, good citizens
Hmm.
do. They don't quit. But the reality is everything's always changing. And something
Mm,
can be right for you at one time and it is not right for you the next time. And that's not a failure. It's not a problem. It's actually fine as long as you're willing to admit, hey, I was wrong about this aspect of it, or I got more information and my mind changed. As long as your ego or your identity or like sense of identity is willing to do that,
hmm.
which
Hmm.
I struggle with constantly, you know, like you get like like when a change comes, there is this, for me personally, there is this resistance because I don't want to admit something was a mistake, you
Hmm.
know? Um, and I go through this process of fighting it, fighting it, fighting it. And then I'm like, well, I'm not happy, you know, and it's not anyone's fault, you know, it was just like it's not working.
Hmm.
Yeah. So I think that's
It's
just
embarrassing, right? You choose
yeah.
something, you get excited, you tell all your friends, and you have to be like, well, never mind. I
Yeah.
cannot tell you how many businesses I almost started.
Yeah.
I'm like, help me choose a name. Send it out to all my friends are like, what happened to your business? I'm like, well, it is my business partner. And
Yeah.
so, and then it keeps me keeping stuff to myself a little bit more. But I mean, like being okay or like that didn't work out or I love changing my mind. I
Hmm.
love getting more information and changing my mind. I love deep discussions thinking one way and coming out thinking another way. You know what I mean? I do not have a problem with it. Like if I'm gonna fail, I'm gonna fail spectacularly.
I love
Like
that.
it's gonna be so, you know what I mean? You might as well. Um, I don't know.
It's
I,
funny. Go ahead.
no, go ahead. Go
It
ahead.
makes me think of this thing that I've thought about for a long time, which is maybe like a weird thing to say, but like change is exciting. We get bored if things are to do the same too long. And my whole little like joke is like if heaven existed, it'd be boring. Like, you
Oh
know
my
what I
God.
mean?
It's
Like
so boring.
perfect all the time, every day, forever.
Like what would you even do?
You'd
What do you
like
do there?
for like a while it'd be fun, it'd be great.
Yeah.
But then you would start to get itchy in your skin and you'd want something to change. You
Yeah.
would.
People manufacture challenges all the time. Like, let me go hit that mountain or let me raft. Like, people like the feeling of overcoming and learning more about themselves in the process. Like, I can do this and I can do
And so
that. Just
and
thinking about how boring heaven's gonna be.
I mean, again,
I
I
mean,
think
hell's where the party's at, really.
I mean, I people can believe whatever they want to believe. That I mean, just from my perspective personally,
Hmm.
I never really resonated with either place. I think hell is here, heaven is here,
Yeah, yeah. I
but
don't know. I think the world, like you mentioned, how it's out of control and, what is in our control, what can we do? And I think we can decide how we react
yeah.
to it. And that is the biggest thing that's going to change how we feel about experience day to day. Is just how much of that terrible news that's constantly coming in, how much of it we're going to allow to change our lives when it doesn't really look like it's going to get better, doesn't look like people are going to stop trying to oppress other people anytime soon. It's going to continue to happen. And how can we be whole, balanced beings through that process, you
Yeah.
know? And I think it's about changing the way that it affects us. Like we
Hmm.
can take note of it, still have our dreams of changing the world. Some of it affects us directly, but change what we can change. But for the rest, you know, just allow it not to affect us energetically, emotionally, mentally, because that's going to put us even further away from where we want to go in the end.
Yeah. Yeah. That's I know we're almost at time, and I think that's a beautiful way to end it.
Okay.
Um, yeah, I feel like that's exactly what people need to be doing. And that's what I've been trying to do with failure and success at various points.
Right, right.
But yeah, I'm just like, what's the world I want to create and how can I live and embody that and move towards that and
Hmm.
fuck
Hmm.
everything else? Like, what do I
Hmm.
want? If I want a world where people are housed, I'm gonna just try to do what's in my power to live in that reality, and
Yeah.
try to make that reality.
And when it's not in your power, you just move
Yeah.
on.
You move
Nothing you can
on.
do here. There's nothing you
Exactly.
can do.
So yeah, like before we end, obviously, like where can folks find you, connect with your work? You said that you're starting a blog, so there's going to be some fun writings that you're going to be sharing with folks. So where can folks connect with you? Where do you want to be connected with? Yeah, let us know.
Yeah, so I will be under your everyday gifts because that's kind of the thing I'm talking about. So it's gonna be your everydaygifts.com. We're gonna talk a lot about it's gonna be blog, talk a lot about, a lot of the themes that we talked about today is gonna be on there. But not but and also in a very practical way, in a very day-to-day way. So that will be on there. The book hopefully will come out soon. Just looking for an agent. Um, And then there'll be probably a little activity on Instagram, YouTube, but youreverydaygifts.com.
Yay. Everyone go to that website. Well, again, thank you so much.
Yay. Thanks for having me. It was so lovely to chat with you today.
Yeah, you too. Bye.
All right.